A gun aimed straight at my daughter's face. Not in some dark alley, but right on our own front lawn. The man holding it wasn't a criminal. He was our neighborhood's security guard. He thought she was a trespasser. What he didn't know, she commands FBI tactical teams. And that night, he pointed his weapon at the wrong woman. When I first moved into Lakeside Pines, I thought I'd found heaven. The lawns were perfect, the lake shimmered like glass, and every neighbor smiled as if we'd all stepped into a postcard. After 30 years working as a diplomatic officer overseas, I wanted peace. No more conflict, no more politics. The Homeowners Association promised order and safety. At first, I believed them. Cameras on every street, guards patrolling in shiny SUVs, rules printed on glossy brochures. Luxury living with peace of mind, the slogan said. But beneath the calm exterior, something felt rigid. Notices for tiny infractions, polite threats disguised as reminders. I brushed it off. I dealt with dictators. An HOA couldn't shake me. Then my daughter, Amy, called. She'd been overseas for 2 years on a counterterrorism task force and wanted to spend a few weeks home. Couldn't wait. I'd tell her about the lake, the trails, the friendly faces. If only I'd known those same friendly faces were about to turn our lives into a battlefield. Amy arrived just after sunset. Even exhausted, she carried herself with that quiet authority I'd seen in every decorated commander. Calm eyes, measured tone, the weight of 1,000 difficult choices behind a steady smile. She hugged me hard. "Feels good to be home, Dad." We laughed over dinner, swapping stories, my diplomatic missions, her classified ones. I'd never been prouder. But I also knew Amy was the kind of person who couldn't turn off vigilance. Years of tactical command had wired her to read every room, every shadow. When I told her about the HOA's endless rules and our self-important security head, she smirked. Sounds like a power trip, not a safety policy. I didn't know it then, but those words were prophecy. Because a few nights later, one man's power trip nearly got him killed by the same woman he tried to intimidate. The HOA was ruled by Robert Thompson, a retired executive with a perfect smile and a dictator's soul. His wife, Sarah, floated through every event like royalty. They enforced perfection. Every lawn trimmed, every porch light identical, every complaint silenced. And their enforcer was Curtis Wilson. Curtis had once been a police officer until a string of excessive force complaints ended his career. Now, as head of HOA security, he found the one place where unchecked authority could thrive. He strutted around in tactical gear, sunglasses always on, radio crackling like he was commanding troops in a war zone. The residents tolerated him out of fear. Violation notices appeared for the smallest reasons. Garbage cans 2 inches off position, cars parked at a wrong angle. I'd seen men like him before in corrupt regimes. Insecure, armed, and desperate for control. Still, I tried to stay polite. "Morning, Officer Wilson," I'd say. He never answered, just glared. When Amy came home, I warned her. Avoid dealing with him. He's the type who mistakes authority for respect. She smiled. "Don't worry, Dad. I've dealt with worse." She didn't know how soon that experience would save both our lives. It happened on a Friday night. Amy's flight had been delayed, and she arrived around 10. The neighborhood was quiet, streetlights glowing amber through mist. I waited inside, excited to see her pull up. Then I heard shouting. First, I thought it was teens. Then I recognized the voice, Curtis Wilson. Harsh, barking, the kind of tone that didn't belong in a peaceful neighborhood. I rushed outside. The sight froze me. Curtis stood in our driveway, gun drawn, finger tight on the trigger. The weapon's muzzle glinted inches from Amy's face. She stood completely still, hands visible, expression calm. I said, "Get on the ground." Curtis yelled, "You don't have resident clearance." "She's my daughter," I shouted, stepping forward. Amy subtly shifted, keeping me behind her line of sight. Curtis's partner looked uneasy. "Man, she showed you ID." "I don't care. Could be fake." Amy's voice was quiet but firm. "That Glock 19 you're holding, your safety's half engaged. You twitch wrong, you'll shoot your own foot. You sure you're licensed to carry that on private property? Curtis blinked, confused by her precision. I'm an FBI tactical commander, she continued evenly. You've just pointed a loaded firearm at a federal agent without cause. That's a felony. Curtis's face drained of color. He lowered the weapon slightly, muttering something about protocol. I wanted to tear into him, but Amy just said, "Not yet, Dad." She was memorizing everything. The weapon, his badge number, the trembling hand of a man who just made the worst mistake of his life. The next morning, a knock echoed at our door. Robert Thompson stood there, smile practiced, holding a warning notice. "Mr. Johnson," he began. "There was an unfortunate misunderstanding last night. Your security team aimed a gun at my daughter's head." I snapped. Robert didn't flinch. "Protocol, you understand. A resident entering late. Unregistered. She lives here." Amy appeared beside me, calm but sharp. "Mr. Thompson, I'd love to see the licensing documentation for your security staff. I noticed some irregularities last night." For the first time, Robert's perfect smile faltered. "Everything is in order. Agent Johnson, was it?" "Just Amy," she said, smiling faintly. "And you'll be hearing from me soon." That evening, Curtis's SUV idled across our driveway for hours. Every time I looked out the window, his headlights blinked twice. A message. "I'm watching you." Neighbors began avoiding us. Word spread that we were troublemakers. Violation notices flooded our mailbox. Mailbox too tall, grass too short, porch light too warm. But Amy didn't flinch. She spent nights on her laptop, combing through public records, HOA filings, and financial disclosures. Her calm intensity reminded me of a surgeon. Precise, patient, lethal when ready. "Dad," she said one night, "these people aren't just drunk on power. They're hiding something." And that's when our quiet rebellion began. Over the next few days, Amy connected dots I hadn't even noticed. The HOA's security company was registered under a fake address and owned by Robert Thompson's brother-in-law. The contracts were outrageous. Inflated rates, phantom employees, and maintenance projects that never happened. Nearly $500,000 had vanished over 3 years. "It's embezzlement," Amy said flatly. "They're using HOA fees as a personal bank account." She reached out to Jessica Miller, an HOA board member with a conscience. Jessica had suspected wrongdoing but lacked proof. With Amy's analytical skill and her federal contacts, they began compiling evidence. Meanwhile, Curtis kept escalating, parking closer, taking photos of our house, circling like a predator. But fear works only if you believe you're powerless. And Amy? She'd built her career dismantling power structures that thought they were untouchable. One night, Amy caught Curtis sneaking around our property at 3 a.m., flashlight in hand, measuring the grass. Our hidden cameras captured everything. She smiled watching the footage. "Perfect," she said. The next morning, we received 5 new violation letters for nonsense reasons. Amy stacked them neatly on the table. "They're trying to break us," I said. She shook her head. "No, Dad. They're showing us exactly how they operate." Then she made a call. "Marcus, it's Amy. Need your expertise on a civilian fraud case." Quietly, Marcus Reed, one of her bureau colleagues, was a forensic financial analyst. Within a day, he confirmed everything. Shell companies, forged receipts, falsified audits. Amy's plan was simple and brilliant. Gather irrefutable evidence, let them trap themselves further, and expose it publicly at the next HOA meeting. As she said, "Sometimes you don't fight fire with fire. You let the arsonist light his own house." The annual HOA meeting arrived. The community center buzzed with fake smiles and hushed gossip. Robert presided at the front, flanked by Sarah, Curtis, and the trembling treasurer. Amy and I sat quietly in the back row. When the floor opened for comments, I stood. "I have a question about our rising security costs," I said calmly. "They've increased 30%. Could we see an itemized breakdown?" Robert's smile stiffened. Security is our top priority. The board has approved all expenses. Jessica, sitting near the front, added sweetly, "Actually, Robert, I'm on the board, and I haven't seen those expenses either." The room fell silent. Curtis shifted uncomfortably, hand brushing his holster. Amy whispered, "Time." She walked to the projector, connected her phone, and pressed play. The footage appeared. Curtis, gun drawn, shouting at her. Then later, him vandalizing our property at night. Gasps rippled through the crowd. "This," Amy said clearly, "is your head of security." Curtis snapped. "You recorded me?" He lunged forward, rage exploding. Amy moved before anyone else could blink, sidestep, twist, disarm. His gun clattered to the floor, and in seconds he was face down, cuffed with his own restraints. Officer Rodriguez, Amy's police contact, stepped forward from the doorway. "Curtis Wilson, you're under arrest for assault and possession of an unlicensed firearm." Robert tried to leave, but another man blocked him. Marcus Reed, flashing an FBI badge. "Robert Thompson, we need to discuss the HOA's missing funds." The room erupted. For the first time, the residents realized who the real criminals were. In the days that followed, everything unraveled. Robert and Sarah were charged with fraud and embezzlement. Curtis faced multiple counts of assault, intimidation, and illegal weapon possession. The news spread fast. Reporters camped outside the once-perfect community. Homeowners cheered privately, relieved the tyranny had ended. Jessica became interim president and immediately slashed the absurd rules and lowered HOA fees. Linda, our elderly neighbor who once feared speaking up, brought us a homemade pie and said through tears, "It's peaceful again. Real peace this time." Amy smiled softly. "That's the point, ma'am. Real safety doesn't come from gates. It comes from accountability." And just like that, the neighborhood that once felt like a prison became a home. Weeks later, Amy prepared to leave for her next assignment. We sat on the porch watching the sunset over a lake finally free of its reflection of fear. "You could have just arrested him that night," I said. "Why go through all this?" She smiled. "Because removing one bad guard fixes a symptom. Exposing corruption fixes the system." I nodded, proud beyond words. As her car disappeared down the road, I looked at our quiet street. Neighbors chatting, kids laughing. No patrol SUVs idling in shadows. Peace had finally returned. Not the kind printed in brochures, but the kind earned through courage. And I learned something that day. Never underestimate a calm woman with a tactical mind, especially when she's your daughter.